The great chamber of Concordia Prime buzzed with worried voices. 847 different species filled the massive hall, their representatives floating, crawling, walking, and slithering to their designated spots. Some breathed oxygen, others methane, and a few absorbed energy directly from the station's power grid. Translation devices hummed constantly, turning thousands of languages into something everyone could understand. Ambassador Zethkar stood at the center podium, his four arms waving as he spoke. His blue skin had turned pale with stress, and his large black eyes darted across the crowd. He had been the one to make first contact with the humans, and now he had to explain what went wrong. "Fellow beings," Zethkar began, his voice carrying across the chamber through speakers and neural transmitters, "we face something that has never happened in our 10,000 years of galactic peace. A species has rejected us completely." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The tentacled ones from Sector 7 wiggled in confusion. The crystal mines from the Andromeda Bridge glowed with disbelief. Even the ancient gas giants, who rarely spoke, rumbled with surprise. "Tell us exactly what happened," demanded High Chancellor Vorth, her massive form casting shadows across half the chamber. She was a Titan from the old worlds, one of the founding species of the Galactic Council. Her voice could shake mountains when she was angry, and right now she was very angry. Zethkar activated the holographic display. Images of Sol system appeared above the crowd, showing a small yellow star with several planets orbiting it. The third planet glowed blue and green, covered with water and land. "We followed standard protocol," Zethkar explained. "Our diplomatic fleet of 50 ships arrived at the edge of their system. We broadcast greetings in 12,000 languages. We offered the standard gifts of technology, medicine, and knowledge. We invited them to send representatives to join our great civilization." The hologram showed the human response. Text appeared in the air, written in simple letters that everyone could read thanks to their translation systems. "Thank you for visiting our solar system. We appreciate your offer to join your galactic community. However, we must decline. We are not interested in membership, trade agreements, or diplomatic relations at this time. Please leave our solar system within 72 hours, or we will be forced to make you leave. This is not a threat, it is a statement of fact. Have a safe journey home." The chamber fell silent. For several long moments, no one spoke. Then the noise began. Shocked gasps, angry shouts, and confused chatter filled the air. "They threatened you?" asked Commander Nixtal, a warrior from the Blade Worlds. His razor-sharp features twisted with disbelief. "A primitive species that has not even left their own system threatened the Galactic Council?" "It gets worse," Zethkar continued, his voice barely steady. "We gave them our standard response. We told them they had 1 month to reconsider their decision. We explained the benefits of joining galactic civilization. We warned them about the dangers of isolation." More text appeared in the hologram. This time the human message was even shorter. "Your month of consideration is not necessary. Our answer will not change. You have 71 hours and 36 minutes remaining. Please begin your departure procedures." The chamber exploded into chaos. Representatives shouted in hundreds of languages. Some species began making their distress calls, filling the air with clicks, whistles, and electronic screeches. Others simply stared at the display in shock. High Chancellor Vorth raised one massive arm, and the chamber fell silent again. Her voice was cold and hard. "You stayed, of course. No species has ever been allowed to reject the Council's authority." "Yes," Zethkar replied. "We stayed. We wanted to show them the futility of defying galactic civilization. Our ships remained at the edge of their system, waiting for them to come to their senses." "And what did they do?" asked Dr. Sinara, the Council's chief scientist. Her small, furry form stood on a floating platform so others could see her. Unlike the others, she looked more curious than angry. Zethkar's skin turned even paler. "They kept their word. Exactly 72 hours after our arrival, human ships appeared. We had detected no fleet movements, no military preparations. Suddenly they were just there." The hologram changed, showing sleek black ships emerging from what appeared to be empty space. They were smaller than the Council's diplomatic vessels, but moved with purpose and precision. "How many ships?" Commander Nixtal demanded. 12, Zethkar whispered. Laughter erupted from several sections of the chamber. 12 ships against 50? The humans must have been insane. "They opened communications," Zethkar continued, waiting for the laughter to die down. A human female appeared on our screens. She was young by their standards, with brown hair and green eyes. She spoke calmly, like she was discussing the weather. The hologram showed a recording of the human officer. She wore a simple gray uniform with no decorations or symbols of rank. Her expression was polite but firm. "This is Captain Sarah Martinez of the Earth Defense Force. You were warned to leave our system. You chose to ignore that warning. We will now escort you to the system's edge. Do not resist and no harm will come to your crews. Escort us?" Commander Nixtal snarled. 12 primitive ships against 50 council vessels. "That is what we thought," Zethkar said quietly. "Admiral Korath decided to teach them a lesson. He ordered our fleet to advance on their homeworld. He activated our weapon systems and prepared to demonstrate the power of galactic civilization." The chamber held its breath. "The humans fired first," Zethkar continued. "Not with energy weapons or missiles, but with something we had never seen before. Beams of pure force that cut through our shields like they were not there. Our sensors could not even identify what they were using. The hologram showed the battle, if it could be called that. The council ships advanced in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with protective energy shields. The human ships moved like dancers, weaving between the larger vessels. Bright flashes lit up space as unknown weapons fired. "How long did the battle last?" asked High Chancellor Vorth. 17 minutes, Zethkar replied. 17 minutes and our entire diplomatic fleet was destroyed or disabled. Only a few escape pods survived. The chamber fell silent again. This time the silence was different. It was the silence of fear. "Admiral Korath?" asked Commander Nixtal. "Dead. His flagship was the first to be destroyed." Dr. Sinara leaned forward on her platform. "What happened after the battle?" "The humans sent another message," Zethkar said. The hologram showed Captain Martinez again. This time her expression was harder, more serious. "Your ships have been destroyed because you refused to leave when asked politely. We take no pleasure in this violence, but we will not allow foreign military forces in our space. Collect your survivors and go home. Tell your council that Earth is not interested in their civilization. If you return with more ships, we will destroy those too." 12 ships, whispered someone in the crowd. 12 ships destroyed 50 council vessels. "The survivors were allowed to leave," Zethkar continued. "The humans even helped with rescue operations, saving crews from damaged ships. They were polite, efficient, and terrifying. They gave us medical supplies and sent us home with a final message." "What message?" High Chancellor Vorth demanded. Zethkar's 4 hands shook as he activated the hologram one last time. Captain Martinez appeared again, but now she stood on the bridge of what was clearly a much larger ship. Behind her, rows of humans worked at control stations, their faces calm and focused. "People of the Galactic Council," she said, "we know you are watching this recording. We know you will be angry about what happened here. Some of you will call us savages. Others will demand revenge. We want you to understand something important. What you saw today was not our military might. It was 12 patrol ships from our local defense force. Earth's real fleet has not yet entered this battle. We hope it never needs to. Leave us in peace and we will leave you in peace. Force us to fight, and you will discover what humans do to threats against their home." The hologram faded, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. High Chancellor Vorth's voice boomed across the hall. "How long ago did this happen?" 1 month, Zethkar replied. "We gave them our standard ultimatum. They have 1 more week to surrender and accept council authority, or face the consequences." "And what are our intelligence reports saying?" Scout Commander Veltara stepped forward, her insect-like form clicking as she moved. "The humans have not been idle, High Chancellor. Long-range sensors detect massive fleet movements in their system. Ships larger than anything we saw in the battle. Energy readings that do not match any known technology. They are preparing for war." The chamber erupted in noise again, but this time it was different. This was not anger or confusion. This was panic. High Chancellor Vorth raised her arm for silence one final time. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 10,000 years of galactic peace. "Then we must decide. Do we negotiate with these humans? Or do we crush them before they become a threat to galactic stability?" The vote would come soon. The consequences would reshape the galaxy forever. High Admiral Korthvin stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, watching the stars shift as his massive fleet dropped out of hyperspace. 200 ships materialized around him, the largest military force the Galactic Council had assembled in 3,000 years. Dreadnoughts the size of small moons hung in space beside him. their hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets. The admiral was old, even by galactic standards. His scaled hide bore scars from the subjugation wars when the Council had last faced serious resistance. His 6 eyes had seen entire civilizations kneel before the might of galactic authority. Today, he would add humans to that list. "Status report," he commanded, his voice carrying across the bridge through neural links. "All ships in formation." "Admiral," replied his aide, a young crystalline officer whose body glowed blue with excitement. "Long-range sensors confirm we are at the edge of the Sol system. No immediate threats detected." Korthvin's mouth twisted into what his species called a smile. "No threats detected. Of course not. What threat could a primitive species pose to this armada? Open a channel to the human homeworld," he ordered. "It is time to end this foolishness." The communication officer, a tentacled one from the outer rim, worked at her console. "Channel open, Admiral. Broadcasting on all frequencies." Korthvin straightened his massive form and activated the holographic recorder. This message would be sent to every corner of the galaxy as proof of Council power. "Humans of Earth," he began, his voice steady and commanding. "I am High Admiral Korthvin of the Galactic Council Defense Force. You have rejected the generous offer to join galactic civilization. You have destroyed Council vessels. These crimes cannot go unpunished." He paused, letting his words sink in. Behind him, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, preparing weapons and defense systems. "However, the Council is merciful," Korthvin continued. "Surrender now and your species will be allowed to survive under Council protection. Your leaders will face justice, but your people will be spared. You have 1 hour to respond." The Admiral cut the transmission and settled back in his command chair. 1 hour was more than enough time for the humans to realize their situation was hopeless. No species had ever faced a Council fleet of this size and survived. "Admiral," called his sensor operator, a spider thing from the dark worlds. "I am detecting movement in the asteroid belt." "Show me," Korthvin ordered. The main display lit up with a tactical view of the Sol system. The human homeworld sat in the 3rd orbital position, a blue-green sphere that looked peaceful from this distance. But in the asteroid belt between the 4th and 5th planets, red dots were moving. "How many ships?" asked the Admiral. 12, sir. Same class as the vessels that attacked our diplomatic fleet." Korthvin laughed, a sound like grinding stones. 12 ships. They send 12 ships against 200. He turned to his weapons officer. "Are you detecting any larger vessels? Hidden fleets? Cloaked dreadnoughts?" The weapons officer, a massive beetle form from the warrior worlds, ran his scans again. "Negative, Admiral. Only 12 small vessels. Energy signatures match the previous encounter." "Then they choose to die with honor," Korthvin said. "I can respect that even if they are primitives." The hour passed slowly. The human ships continued their approach, maintaining a steady course toward the Council fleet. They made no attempt to hide or retreat. They simply flew forward, as if 12 vessels could challenge an armada. "Still no response to our surrender demand," reported the communication officer. "Then we will begin the demonstration," Korthvin declared. "All ships advance to planetary bombardment range. Prepare to glass their cities. Perhaps watching their world burn will teach them the price of defiance." The massive fleet began to move. Dreadnoughts and battleships accelerated toward the inner system, their weapons charging with lethal energy. This would not be a battle. It would be an execution. The human ships continued their approach, seemingly unconcerned by the overwhelming force bearing down on them. "Admiral," called the sensor operator, his voice puzzled. "The human vessels are changing course. They are moving to intercept us." "Intercept?" Korthvin stared at the display. "All 12 of them?" "Yes, sir. They will reach weapons range in 6 minutes." The Admiral shook his head in amazement. These humans were either the bravest species he had ever encountered or the most foolish. Perhaps both. "Open a channel to the lead human vessel," he ordered. "I want to speak to their commander before we destroy them." The main screen flickered and a human face appeared. It was a male this time, older than the female from the first encounter. His hair was gray, his face weathered, but his eyes were calm and steady. "I am Admiral Jack Harrison of the Earth Defense Force," the human said. "You are trespassing in our space." Korthvin leaned forward in his chair. "I am High Admiral Korthvin of the Galactic Council. Look around you, human. You face 200 warships. Each one could destroy your entire fleet. Surrender now and I promise you a quick death." Admiral Harrison's expression did not change. We gave you fair warning. You chose to ignore it. Now you will face the consequences. Consequences? Korthvin laughed again. What consequences can 12 primitive ships deliver? You are about to find out, Harrison replied calmly. Earth Defense Force, you are cleared to engage. The transmission ended. On the tactical display, the 12 human ships suddenly changed formation, spreading out into attack positions. All ships open fire, Korthvin commanded. Destroy them quickly. The Council fleet unleashed its fury. Energy beams that could melt asteroids lanced across space toward the human vessels. Missile salvos capable of cracking moons streaked through the darkness. The very fabric of space lit up with destructive power. The human ships danced through the barrage like leaves in a windstorm. Beams that should have vaporized them passed harmlessly through empty space. Missiles that should have torn them apart exploded against nothing but vacuum. How are they moving like that? Demanded Korthvin. Unknown, sir, replied his sensor operator. Their ships appear to be phasing in and out of normal space. Our targeting systems cannot lock onto them. Before the Admiral could respond, the humans returned fire. The weapons they used defied everything the Council knew about physics. Beams of pure energy that seemed to ignore shields entirely. Projectiles that moved at impossible speeds, punching through armor like it was paper. Strange pulses that made entire ships simply stop working. The first Council vessel to die was the dreadnought Infinite Might. A human beam struck its bow, and the massive ship simply came apart, its hull peeling away like flower petals. There was no explosion, no burst of flame. The ship just ceased to exist as a functional vessel. Shields, screamed Korthvin. Maximum defensive power. His crew worked frantically at their controls, but the human weapons seemed to pass through their shields as if they were not there. Ship after ship began to fall, each one destroyed by weapons that should not have been possible. The Eternal Glory shuddered as a human beam struck its side. Alarms rang across the bridge as hull breaches opened to space. The Admiral felt his ship dying around him. All ships retreat, he ordered. Fall back to hyperspace range. But it was too late. The human ships moved with impossible speed, appearing where they were needed, striking where they could do the most damage. They fought like a pack of predators, coordinating their attacks with perfect precision. In 17 minutes, the most powerful fleet in galactic history was reduced to wreckage and escape pods. Admiral Korthvin found himself alone on his bridge, the rest of his crew dead or evacuated. His ship was dying, life support failing, but he still had communications. With his last breath, he activated the emergency recorder. This is High Admiral Korthvin, he gasped into the device. The humans, they have weapons beyond our understanding. Do not underestimate them. Do not send more ships unless... The recording cut off as his flagship finally succumbed to its wounds. In space around the human ships, thousands of escape pods drifted helplessly. The Council survivors waited for death, expecting the humans to finish what they had started. Instead, the human ships began rescue operations. Admiral Harrison's voice echoed across all emergency frequencies. Council survivors, this is the Earth Defense Force. We are transmitting coordinates for safe zones. Remain calm and await pickup. Medical assistance is available for those who need it. One by one, the escape pods were collected by human rescue ships that appeared as if from nowhere. The survivors were treated with efficiency and surprising kindness. Their wounds were healed, their needs met, their fears calmed. When the rescue operations were complete, Admiral Harrison broadcast one final message, knowing it would be recorded and transmitted to every corner of the galaxy. People of the Galactic Council, he said, his image appearing on screens across the wreckage. We did not want this battle. We asked you to leave us in peace. You chose to bring war to our home. Behind him, the human fleet was already disappearing, fading back into whatever dimension they had emerged from. What you have seen today is a small fraction of Earth's defensive capability, Harrison continued. We have no desire to conquer your worlds or destroy your civilization. We simply want to be left alone. But if you force us to defend ourselves again, the consequences will be far more severe. The emergency session had been running for 3 days straight. Representatives from across the galaxy sat in their chambers, their voices hoarse from debate, their minds reeling from the impossible news that kept pouring in from Sol System. Dr. Sinera stood at the central podium, surrounded by floating displays showing data that made no sense. Her small, furry form trembled with exhaustion, but her eyes burned with scientific curiosity. For 70 years, she had studied alien psychology and behavior. Never had she encountered anything like the humans. "The evidence is undeniable," she announced to the packed chamber. "The humans possess technology that exceeds our understanding by centuries, possibly millennia." High Chancellor Vorth leaned forward in her massive chair. Dark circles under her eyes showed she had not slept since the news arrived. "Explain how a species that has not even achieved faster than light travel could develop such weapons." Dr. Sinara activated a holographic display showing the battle, footage from Admiral Korthavan's fleet. The images played in slow motion, revealing details that had been missed in the chaos of combat. "Watch their beam weapons," she said, pointing to the screen. "These are not energy discharges as we understand them. Our sensors detected no heat signatures, no particle emissions, no electromagnetic radiation. Yet they cut through our strongest armor like it was made of soft clay." The chamber watched in horrified fascination as human weapons tore through council ships. The destruction was clinical, precise, almost surgical in its efficiency. "What about their movement patterns?" asked Commander Nixital. The warrior's proud features had been replaced by worried lines. "Our ships could not track them. How is that possible?" "They appear to be using some form of dimensional manipulation," Dr. Sinara replied. "Our physicists believe they can shift their vessels partially out of normal space-time. This would explain why our targeting systems failed and why our weapons passed harmlessly through them." She changed the display to show energy readings from the battle. Strange waveforms danced across the screen, patterns that defied known science. "But the most disturbing discovery is not their technology," she continued. "It is their psychology." The chamber fell silent. Even the constant background chatter of translation devices seemed to quiet. "I have spent months analyzing every communication from the humans, every interaction we have recorded. I have studied their response patterns, their decision-making processes, their cultural indicators." Dr. Sinara paused, her small hands shaking as she prepared to deliver news that would change everything the council thought. "They knew about life in the galaxy. Every intelligent species we have encountered evolved from prey animals, herbivores, filter feeders, social creatures who survived through cooperation and group living. We developed intelligence to avoid predators, to work together, to find peaceful solutions to conflicts." She activated a new display showing the evolutionary trees of dozens of galactic species. All followed the same basic pattern: small social creatures that developed intelligence as a survival mechanism. "The humans are different," she said quietly. "They evolved from predators." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Several representatives made sounds of disbelief in their native languages. "Impossible," declared Senator Kreith of the Harmony Worlds. "Predator species cannot develop advanced intelligence. They lack the social cooperation necessary for civilization." "That is what we believed," Dr. Sinara agreed. "But the humans prove us wrong. They did not evolve as solitary hunters. They developed as pack predators, social carnivores who worked together to bring down prey much larger than themselves." The display changed again, showing images of Earth's surface that had been captured by long-range reconnaissance probes. Vast cities covered the planet, but between them stretched wilderness areas that looked more dangerous than anything found on civilized worlds. "Their homeworld is what we would classify as a death world," she continued. "Gravity 3 times galactic standard. Extreme weather patterns that would be considered natural disasters on most inhabited planets. Predatory life forms that hunt in packs just like the humans themselves." Commander Nixtal stood up from his seat. "You are saying they are still predators? Still hunters?" "Yes," Dr. Sinara replied simply. "They never stopped being what they evolved to be. They simply got better at it." She activated footage from human cities showing crowds of people moving through busy streets. To most council species it looked like chaos, but Dr. Sinara had learned to read the patterns. "Watch how they move," she instructed. "See how they form groups, how they scan their environment, how they position themselves for maximum advantage. These are not the behaviors of prey animals seeking safety in numbers. These are the behaviors of predators coordinating for a hunt." The chamber watched with growing unease as the human footage played. What had seemed like normal city life now looked distinctly threatening. "But they are civilized," protested Ambassador Fexlin of the Trade Federation. "They have cities, technology, art. How can they be mere predators?" "They are not mere predators," Dr. Sinara corrected. "They are intelligent predators. They developed civilization not in spite of their hunting instincts, but because of them. They learned to work together to bring down bigger prey. Eventually, that prey became other intelligent species. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Even the mechanical species had stopped their electronic humming. "Are you suggesting they see us as prey?" asked High Chancellor Vorth, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Sinara nodded grimly. "When we arrived in their system with our diplomatic fleet, they did not see potential allies or trading partners. They saw a threat to their territory. When we ignored their warning to leave, they did not see stubborn negotiators. They saw prey that was too stupid to run away." She brought up the final piece of evidence: communication intercepts from the human military during the battle with Admiral Korthvin's fleet. "Listen to how they talk during combat," she said, activating the audio files. Human voices filled the chamber, calm and professional even in the midst of battle. But Dr. Sinara had learned to understand the subtle meanings behind their words. "Target the command ship first. Cut off the head and the body will follow. Pack formation Alpha. Drive them toward the kill zone. Don't let any of them escape to warn the others." They use hunting terminology, Dr. Sinara explained. Even in space combat against advanced technology, they think like predators taking down prey. Senator Kreeth was visibly shaking. "Then we cannot negotiate with them." "How do you negotiate with a species that sees you as food?" "We are not food to them," Dr. Sinara replied. "We are something worse. We are rivals." The display showed a map of the galaxy, with human space marked as a small red dot near the edge. Every piece of evidence suggests the humans have been preparing for our arrival since they first developed spaceflight. They assumed the galaxy would be hostile because that is how they think. They prepared for war because that is what they would do in our position. High Chancellor Vorth struggled to process this information, but they seemed reasonable in their communications. They offered to let survivors go free. "Because they are intelligent predators," Dr. Sinara emphasized. "They understand that sometimes it is better to let some prey escape to warn others. Fear can be more effective than death." She brought up the human message that had been broadcast after the battle. Admiral Harrison's calm face filled the screen. "Look at his expression," she instructed. "He is not angry or excited after victory. He is satisfied. This is the look of a successful hunter who has accomplished his goal." The chamber erupted in frightened voices. Representatives began talking over each other, their words mixing into a cacophony of panic and disbelief. High Chancellor Vorth raised her arm for silence. When the chamber quieted, her voice was heavy with dread. "What do you recommend, Dr. Sinara? How do we deal with this threat?" The scientist looked around the chamber, seeing fear in hundreds of different eyes. Her answer would determine the fate of galactic civilization. "We have 3 choices," she said finally. "We can try to destroy them before they become stronger. We can attempt to contain them in their home system. Or we can try to understand them well enough to coexist." "And which do you recommend?" asked Commander Nixtal. Dr. Sinara was quiet for a long moment. "I recommend we remember that they could have destroyed Admiral Korthvin's entire fleet without taking prisoners. They could have pursued the survivors and eliminated all witnesses. They could have launched an immediate counterattack against our worlds." She paused, letting that sink in. "They chose not to. That suggests they are not mindless killers. They are strategic thinkers who understand the long-term consequences of their actions." "So you believe we can negotiate with them?" asked High Chancellor Vorth hopefully. "No," Dr. Sinara replied. "I believe they might negotiate with us, but only if we approach them as equals, not as superiors trying to civilize primitives, and only if we can offer them something they want more than our destruction." The chamber fell silent again as representatives tried to imagine what a species of intelligent predators might want from the galaxy. Outside the station, space was quiet and peaceful, but everyone in that chamber knew the peace was an illusion. Somewhere in the depths of Sol system, humanity was preparing for the war they believed. The vote took 6 hours and ended with the most divisive result in Council history. The younger species wanted negotiations. The elder races demanded war. In the end, fear won over wisdom. High Chancellor Vorth stood before the largest military gathering in galactic history. 50,000 warships stretched across space in perfect formations, their hulls gleaming with weapons that could reshape planets. Representatives from every major military power in the galaxy had contributed vessels to the armada. "Today, we end the human threat before it can spread," she announced. Her voice transmitted to every ship in the fleet. They have shown us their true nature. They have rejected our peace and chosen violence. Now they will learn the price of defying galactic civilization. Fleet Admiral Zaxthor, commander of the combined forces, activated the holographic display in his command center. The tactical map showed their target, Sol system, that small yellow star where humanity had made its home. Intelligence reports indicate the humans have been busy, he told his senior officers. Long-range sensors detect massive energy signatures throughout their system. They know we are coming. The intelligence was troubling. Human ships had been spotted in deep space, conducting what appeared to be training exercises. New installations had appeared on their outer planets, structures that defied easy classification. Most worrying of all, the humans had begun expanding into their asteroid belt, turning chunks of rock into floating fortresses. How many human ships do we expect to face? Asked Admiral Kethvar, commander of the Hegemony's battle fleet. Unknown, Zaxthor admitted. We have confirmed sightings of at least 300 vessels, but our sensors cannot penetrate their stealth technology. There could be thousands more. The assembled officers studied the tactical data with growing unease. The humans had demonstrated superior technology in their previous encounters, but surely numbers would make the difference. 50,000 ships against a few hundred was overwhelming odds by any calculation. All fleets prepare for hyperspace jump, Admiral Zaxthor commanded. We strike fast and hard. No mercy, no prisoners. The humans chose this war. The massive armada vanished from normal space, hurtling through the twisted dimensions of hyperspace toward their target. It would take them 3 days to reach its Sol system, 3 days to prepare for the battle that would determine the galaxy's future. They never made it. On the second day of their journey, the first attacks began. Human ships materialized out of nowhere, striking at the edges of the formation before disappearing again. At first, the attack seemed random, almost desperate, single vessels darting in to take shots at the overwhelming Council force. Admiral Zaxthor was not concerned. Let them waste their ships on futile gestures, he told his staff. We will crush them when we reach their homeworld. But the attacks were not futile. Each human ship that struck targeted specific vessels, command ships, communication relays, sensor platforms. One by one, the Council's ability to coordinate their massive fleet began to degrade. By the end of the second day, the Armada had lost 50 ships and could no longer maintain proper formation. Worse, the human attacks were becoming more coordinated, more devastating. Sir, reported his sensor officer, a crystalline being whose form flickered with worry. We are detecting more human ships. Hundreds of them, all around us. Admiral Zaxthor stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Red dots surrounded his fleet in hyperspace, something that should have been impossible. No known technology could operate weapons in the twisted dimensions between stars. How are they tracking us in hyperspace? He demanded. Before anyone could answer, the human fleet struck in full force. What followed was not a battle in any traditional sense. It was a massacre conducted with scientific precision. Human ships phased in and out of dimensions the Council did not know existed, striking from angles that violated the laws of physics. Their weapons carved through armor and shields as if they were made of paper. The Council fleet tried to fight back, but their formations were useless in the chaos of dimensional warfare. Ships fired at targets that were no longer there, while human weapons found their marks with impossible accuracy. Admiral Zaxthor watched his proud armada being torn apart around him. All ships emergency jump to normal space, he ordered. Get us out of hyperspace. The surviving vessels burst back into normal space in a scattered, broken formation. They had lost 3,000 ships in less than an hour of fighting. The remainder were damaged, demoralized, and separated across several light years of empty space. But the humans were not finished with them. As the Council ships tried to regroup, human vessels appeared among them like ghosts materializing from fog. They moved through the scattered fleet, picking off damaged ships and isolated squadrons with ruthless efficiency. They are not fighting like any species we know, observed Admiral Kethavar during one of the brief communication windows between attacks. They strike and fade, strike and fade. They never engage in direct combat unless they have overwhelming advantage. Admiral Zaxthor was beginning to understand the terrible truth. They are hunting us, he said quietly. Like predators stalking prey. The war lasted 8 months, but it was never really a war. It was an extended hunt, with the humans as patient predators and the Council forces as increasingly desperate prey. The Council tried every strategy they knew. They formed defensive circles, but human ships attacked from above and below. They split into smaller groups, but the humans hunted them down one by one. They tried to retreat to fortified positions, but human weapons punched through their strongest defenses. Most terrifying of all were the weapons themselves. The humans seemed to have an endless variety of tools of destruction, each one more impossible than the last. Missiles that phased through armor to explode inside ship hulls, energy beams that induced cascade failures in power systems, viral programs that took control of Council computer networks and turned their own weapons against them. They are holding back, Dr. Sinara reported during one of the emergency Council sessions. Analysis of their attack patterns suggests they are using only a fraction of their available forces. High Chancellor Vorth stared at the strategic map in horror. Red zones marked areas of space where human forces had been detected. The zones covered half the galaxy. How is that possible? They are one species from one system. Intercepted communications suggest this is not their main fleet, Dr. Sinara replied. These appear to be what they call forward scouts and advanced reconnaissance units. Their primary military forces remain in Sol system. The implications were staggering. If what they were facing was just the human scouting force, what would their real military look like? Admiral Kethfer's voice crackled over the communication system from his crippled flagship. High Chancellor, we cannot continue this war. We have lost 47,000 ships. The humans have lost perhaps a dozen. Our civilization is collapsing, it was true. Trade routes had been abandoned as merchant ships fled to safety. Planetary governments were declaring independence rather than support the Council's doomed war effort. Some species were even attempting to negotiate separate peace treaties with the humans. What are their losses? High Chancellor Vorth asked desperately. Dr. Sinara checked her reports. According to our best intelligence, the humans have lost 11 ships in 8 months of warfare. 11. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. They are toying with us. Admiral Zaxthor reported from his hidden position in the Outer Rim. They could have ended this war months ago. They are letting it continue for reasons we do not understand. Those reasons became clear when the humans finally revealed their hand. It started with simultaneous attacks on every major Council military installation in the galaxy. Space stations that had stood for millennia were reduced to scrap metal in minutes. Planetary defense networks simply shut down as human viruses took control of their systems. Entire fleets found themselves unable to fire their weapons or engage their engines. But the humans did not attack civilian targets. They did not bombard planets or destroy cities. They methodically dismantled only the Council's ability to wage war, leaving everything else untouched. The message was clear. They could destroy galactic civilization whenever they chose. They simply had not chosen to do so yet. The end came suddenly. On a quiet Tuesday morning, every Council communication system in the galaxy received the same transmission. Admiral Harrison's weathered face appeared on screens across hundreds of worlds. People of the Galactic Council, he began, his voice calm despite the chaos his forces had unleashed. This war is over. Your military forces have been defeated. Your weapons have been disabled. Your leaders have been given a choice. Behind him, the stars of space provided a peaceful backdrop that contrasted sharply with his words. We did not start this conflict. We asked repeatedly to be left alone. You chose to bring war to our home, and now you have experienced the consequences. He paused, letting his words sink in across the galaxy. However, we take no pleasure in destruction. We are prepared to end this war under the following conditions. All Council military forces will withdraw from human space. All claims of authority over Earth and its colonies will be renounced. A 50-light-year exclusion zone will be established around Sol system. The space station that had once been called Concordia Prime now drifted in orbit around a dead moon, its gleaming halls reduced to emergency lighting and basic life support. Most of its sections had been sealed off after human weapons had carved precise holes through its superstructure during the final battle. What remained was barely enough to house the surviving Council leadership. Ambassador Sarah Chen stepped through the airlocks wearing a simple gray uniform with no insignia of rank. Her ship, the Quiet Resolve, hung in space nearby like a dark predator watching over wounded prey. It was the first human vessel to enter Council space since the war began, and its presence sent shivers through every being on the station. High Chancellor Vorth waited in what had once been the grand reception hall. The massive chamber now held only a few dozen representatives, all that remained of a government that had once ruled 800 worlds. Her ancient form was bent with exhaustion and defeat, but she still carried herself with dignity. "Ambassador Chen," she said formally, "welcome to what remains of our civilization." Sarah Chen looked around the damaged hall with calm eyes, taking in the broken murals and scorched walls. When she spoke, her voice was neither triumphant nor cruel, simply matter-of-fact. "High Chancellor, I bring greetings from Earth and an offer to end this conflict permanently." She activated a small holographic projector, displaying a map of the galaxy with a red sphere marked around Sol system. The sphere extended 50 light-years in all directions, encompassing several hundred star systems. "The terms are simple," Chen continued. "This exclusion zone will be respected by all Council forces. No ships, no communication attempts, no surveillance platforms. In return, humanity will maintain no presence beyond these borders." Dr. Sinara, one of the few survivors of the Council's scientific establishment, leaned forward from her floating platform. "Ambassador, may I ask why these terms are so generous? You could demand much more." Sarah Chen turned to face the small scientist, her expression thoughtful. "Dr. Sinara, is it not? I have read your reports on human psychology. You understand us better than most." She deactivated the hologram and walked to one of the damaged windows, looking out at the stars beyond. "We never wanted to rule the galaxy, Doctor. We just wanted to be left alone to develop in our own way. Your council forced this conflict by refusing to accept our sovereignty." High Chancellor Vorth struggled to understand. "But your military power, you could dominate every world in the galaxy. Could we?" Chen asked mildly. "Domination requires occupation, administration, constant vigilance against rebellion. We would need to maintain massive fleets on every world, install governors, manage economies, handle disputes between hundreds of different species." She turned back to face the assembled representatives. "We are not an empire-building species, High Chancellor. We are territorial. There is a difference." Admiral Zaxthor, one of the few military commanders to survive the war, spoke from his position near the back of the hall. "Then what is to stop other species from challenging your borders once we are gone? What is to prevent future conflicts?" Sarah Chen smiled for the first time since arriving. It was not a pleasant expression. "Admiral, you have spent 8 months fighting what we call our Forward Defense Force. These were patrol ships, scouts, and rapid response units. You never encountered our main fleet." She reactivated the hologram, this time showing the Sol system in detail. The display revealed massive orbital installations, fleets of ships that dwarfed anything the Council had ever built, and defensive systems that seemed to violate multiple laws of physics. "Our real military has never left home system," Chen continued. "It exists for one purpose, to ensure that Earth remains inviolate. Any species foolish enough to test our borders will discover what we have been building while you fought our scouts." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Everything they had faced, all the devastating losses, all the impossible weapons and tactics, it had been humanity's minor defensive force. Dr. Sinara's voice was barely a whisper. "How long have you been preparing for this?" "Since we first looked up at the stars," Chen replied. "When humans began developing spaceflight, we asked ourselves a simple question. What will we do if we encounter hostile aliens? The answer shaped everything we built." She gestured to the hologram showing human space. "We assumed the galaxy would be dangerous because that is how we think. We prepared for war because that is what we would do in your position. Every human colony, every space station, every ship was designed with one goal: protect Earth." High Chancellor Vorth found her voice. "And now?" "Now we have accomplished that goal," Chen said simply. "Earth is safe. Our colonies are secure. Our borders are recognized. We can finally focus on what we really want to do." "Which is?" asked Dr. Sinara. Sarah Chen walked back to the window, looking out at the distant stars. "Explore, learn, grow, build things that have never existed before. Push the boundaries of what is possible." She paused, her expression becoming distant. "We are curious creatures, Dr. Sinara. We want to know what lies beyond the next star, what secrets hide in the depths of space, what wonders we might discover if we keep looking. But we needed to ensure our home was safe first. The scientist tilted her head curiously. Will you share your discoveries with the galaxy? Perhaps, Chen replied. If the galaxy proves it can be trusted, if species can learn to respect boundaries and accept that not everyone wants to join their civilizations, she turned back to the assembled representatives. The Council made a fundamental error in how you approached us. You assumed that because you had achieved galactic civilization, everyone else should want the same thing. You could not conceive of a species that might prefer isolation. Admiral Zaxthor shifted uncomfortably. But isolation leads to stagnation. How can you advance without trade, without exchange of ideas? Admiral, in the 8 months you spent fighting our scouts, human science advanced more rapidly than it had in the previous century. Necessity forced us to develop technologies that we might have taken decades to discover otherwise. She activated the hologram again, showing schematics of human weapons and ships that made Council technology look primitive. War may be destructive, but it is also educational. We learned much about galactic technology from the wreckage of your fleets. We improved upon it. We made it better. Dr. Sinara was taking notes frantically. Ambassador, may I ask about your dimensional manipulation technology? How did you develop the ability to fight in hyperspace? Sarah Chen smiled again, this time with genuine amusement. Dr. Sinara, you are thinking like a prey species again. You assume we developed these technologies for military purposes. She changed the display to show human deep space exploration vessels. We developed dimensional manipulation to explore regions of space that are inaccessible through normal means. We created hyperspace weapons as mining tools for harvesting resources from dangerous areas. We built phasing technology to study stellar phenomena without being destroyed by them. The implications were staggering. The humans had not built a war machine. They had built an exploration apparatus so advanced that it could double as the most devastating military force in galactic history. Everything we showed you during the war, Chen continued, was civilian technology adapted for defensive purposes. We are not a military species, despite appearances. We are explorers who happen to be very good at protecting ourselves. High Chancellor Vorth struggled to process this information. Then what happens now? What becomes of the Council? That is up to you, Chen replied. Rebuild your civilization however you see fit. Learn from this experience. Become better than you were. She prepared to leave, but Dr. Sinara called out one final question. Ambassador, what would it have taken for humanity to join the Council peacefully? Sarah Chen paused at the airlock entrance, considering the question carefully. You would have needed to convince us that joining was our idea, she said finally. Humans do not respond well to ultimatums, even benevolent ones. We prefer to make our own choices even when those choices are wrong. She stepped through the airlock, then turned back one last time. Dr. Sinara, you spent considerable effort studying human psychology. May I offer you some advice for future first contact situations? The scientist nodded eagerly. Next time you encounter a species that says no, try listening to them. Not everyone wants to be saved from themselves. The airlock sealed, and moments later the quiet resolve vanished into the darkness between stars, carrying Sarah Chen back to humanity's carefully guarded borders. In the damaged halls of the former Concordia Prime, the survivors of galactic civilization began the long process of rebuilding, but now they built with the knowledge that they were not alone in the universe, and that some neighbors preferred to remain strangers. 50 years passed. The galaxy adapted to its new reality, trading around the human exclusion zone, developing new technologies inspired by reverse-engineered wreckage, learning to live with the knowledge that true power sometimes chooses isolation over dominance. And in the depths of space, automated monitoring stations detected something that sent reports racing through intelligence networks across hundreds of worlds. Human ships, larger and more advanced than anything from the war, had begun appearing at the galaxy's edge.